Dear listeners, thank you for supporting us with your subscription. Enjoy watching. I don't know if this story will be of interest to anyone. Reading confessions like this, almost everyone thinks that this could happen to someone else, but not to them. That's what I thought, up to a point. What happened to me is typical of our time when faithfulness is no longer a virtue, but a sneer at best. I got married quite early at the age of 19. In my third year of college, my wife is 1 year younger than me. A normal age arrangement for a family. In the first year, there was a son, 8 years later, a daughter. Right after the institute I joined the army, they paid me a good salary and so my wife could take care of her children instead of working. I spent a lot of time in the country and abroad. As a result, I received a couple of medals, a shrapnel in my back, and I was discharged at the age of 42. After I left the army, I immediately went to work in my first profession at a big metallurgical company. 5 years later, he became Deputy General Direct and co-owner. So I had no problems with money and still. After this day, now I'm 60 years old, my wife is 59. Our married life experience at the time of events was 41 years. And during all the time I had no reason to approach my wife. At least there was not a single thought that she was not faithful to me. My children have grown up, my son and daughter work for the police. My son is already a colonel, head of department, and my daughter is a warrant officer. They both have families of their own and grandchildren. We lived well, at least I thought so. Throughout our marriage, I never once raised my voice at her. She wasn't refused anything. I enjoyed giving her gifts. I really loved her, and we didn't have any intimacy problems with her. Despite her age, my wife managed to maintain and even increase her natural beauty without resorting to the tricks of cosmetal. Do not hide it's nice when your woman looks so attractive. As it turned out, not only me. For the last 15 years, Natasha, that was my wife's name, worked in a pharmaceutical company. She was the head of marketing department and had to travel a lot due to her occupation, especially in the last 5 years. Business trips sometimes dragged on for up to 2 or 3 months. She explained this by the fact that she had to regulate the supply of drugs to pharmacies, especially in large cities. In particular, she often had to be in K. While on business trips, my wife did not forget to call almost every day and tell me how much she missed me and the kids. Once our metallurgical company made a contract with our colleagues for delivery of welded pipes for an oil pipeline, and I, as a Deputy General Director, went to the place for the final decision on the deliveries. That is where everything happened. After signing the contract, we went to the office of their General Director. As is usual on such occasions, a table was laid there with drinks and light snacks. On the CEO's desk there were a few pictures. I looked at them and it took my breath away. In one picture, the owner of the office was standing with tacular red-haired woman in which I immediately recognized my wife, Natasha. To be honest, my mind went blank. With an incredible effort of will I pulled myself together and deliberately in different tone asked who was in the picture. The general proudly explained that it was his favorite woman with whom he had been with for 4 years. And offered to continue the feast at his country mansion, promising at the same time to introduce him to his common-law wife. On the way he praised his beloved, telling her what a great hostess she was. One thing he said was bad. She often had to go to her sick mother and be with her for a long time. But he hoped that everything would work out and he and his beloved could be together. Listening to his revelations, my heart was pounding in my throat. I was very afraid that I could not stand it, and I might strangle him. Though in some part of my mind, I knew that he had nothing to do with it. We pulled up to a well-kept mansion and the owner invited me in, asking me why I was so red. I mumbled that I wasn't feeling well. We went into the dining room, and he proudly introduced me to my wife. Natasha froze when she saw me. It was obvious that she was short-breathed, she turned white and began to slowly sink to the floor. Her friend barely had time to pick her up in his arms. I realized if I didn't leave now, I could kill them both. I turned around and without saying a word, I almost ran out of the mansion. A cab was going by, so I stopped it in time. I picked up my things at the hotel and rushed to the airport. With maximum effort, I managed to get a ticket for the next flight. I only began to come to my senses on the plane. In my head pulsed in the rhythm of the heartbeat of one question: why was she doing this to me? I barely remember how I got home. Walking around the apartment from corner to corner, I kept repeating, why? I could not sit or lie down. By morning, my legs were swollen from the exertion. My heart was no longer pounding. It was rumbling periodically, falling somewhere down. Suddenly I felt a great pain in my chest, and I lost consciousness. My driver found me when he didn't wait for me at the agreed time to take me to work. Concerned, he opened the apartment with his key and me unconscious lying on the floor and immediately called an ambulance. Thank God. It was all right. My heart rhythm was disturbed from the nervous tension. This provoked a severe pain in my chest. I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. During that time, Natasha tried to call me, but I didn't answer the phone. Then I turned it off. I turned it on when I got home, and the phone rang. Natasha was talking nonsense, trying to explain something, asking for forgiveness, even accusing me of something. At the end of the conversation, she started screaming that the children and I were everything to her, that she loved only me, and begged her to forgive her. I listened to her until the end and silently disconnected the phone. I couldn't take it anymore. For 4 years, my wife lived a double life. Twist and turning, afraid of being caught. She lied to me and her children all that time. Despite her great love for the oil industry and one of its big wigs at the same time, she was living in parallel with me, kept as a backup airfield. All this time, my children were trying to find out what had happened, but I was afraid and ashamed to tell them everything, though I knew that I would have to do it sooner or later. Natasha came back a month later. She was still hoping to somehow convince me to forgive her. After listening to her for about an hour, I called my son and daughter. When they arrived, I suggested Natasha tell them herself. The children sat in silence listening to her rambling speech. She boiled down to the fact that I didn't pay enough attention to her, that I didn't see her as a woman. So she found love on the side and it was stronger than her. But she loves us very much and asks us to forgive her. The son was the first to speak. Mother, you did a mean thing to us and to father. It's daddy's business. But I wouldn't forgive. The daughter stood silently, tears rolling down her face. Without saying a word, she left the room. Natasha understood everything. She was all sullen somehow at once, slumped her shoulders and left the apartment without looking at me. I went to the window. My ex-wife came out of the staircase and got into a waiting cab. She went back to her lover NK. She showed up 6 months later. Her new husband had been killed in a car accident, and his children quickly evicted her from the mansion. There was no way out, so she came back to our city. She tried to see me several times, but I refused to talk to her. The children didn't return her calls either. Now she lives in her parents' apartment and works in a pharmacy. I know nothing about her personal life. Dear listeners, please like and subscribe to our channel. It stimulates me to release new videos for you.